evening, everybody.
Hello, hello.
Welcome to another episode of Critique Corner with me, Daniel Parker.
And me, DB Fastbinder. And as always, we have an eclectic week for you.
Yes, in the words of Ed Sullivan, we have a really big shoe, really big shoe.
Yep. And let's just go ahead and do the algorithm-friendly thing early. If
Yes,
you like the cut of our jib, if you like our show, go ahead and give us a like, a subscribe, hit the bell notification.
yes.
Um, Make sure you get our non-existent code for NordVPN and Raid Shadow Legends, because if you're playing Raid Shadow Legends, the best deals are in Finland, I'm told. So
Ah,
they think you're in Finland, then you'll do better.
nice. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
this may or may not be true advice.
yeah.
But it is true. Cold, hard box office numbers.
Indeed, yes. And if you're new, what we usually do is we do some reviews. We look at something new or newish. We may or may not talk about some solo stuff, although we have some solo stuff this week. We look at something classic, but as DB pointed out, we also like box office talk.
Yes, because it's the only industry where you really get a solid view of how things are going.
Yes, and things are not going well for Sony.
No, let's talk about Ghostbusters: Frozen Empire's second weekend first. A 65% week drop off of not a terribly huge box office to start with is never a good look.
No.
We're not quite in the category of Madam Web, but
Mm. Well, as long as it does better than Ghostbusters 2016, I mean, you can maybe call that a win.
so here's the tragic thing. Ghostbusters 2016 made a decent amount of money. It was just a stupidly expensive movie.
Oh,
Let's take a look see here. To the Wayback Machine. All right.
yes. That's the first one, yeah.
Yeah. So Ghostbusters Answer the Call. Its lifetime box office was 128 million, which means that Ghostbusters Afterlife only beat it by 1 million.
Oh,
Which means that if this thing keeps falling off,
yeah.
now mind you, this Ghostbusters Frozen Empire was significantly less expensive to make, so their road to profit is much shorter. I guess the lesson there is you got to actually have a good script. You can't just coast off of people liking the last one.
Yes, and you can only rely on Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd and Ernie Hudson for so long.
Yeah, like it's easy to forget that some of or that they're in their 70s and 80s at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. In the case of Ernie Hudson, yeah, he's pushing 80.
Yeah, he looks good for his age, which is why you can forget about it.
But yeah,
Now, as far as a big new release, we've got Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire.
which did better than I was expecting it to.
Yeah, 80 million opening weekend is nothing to sneeze at all.
Yeah.
From reviews I've heard, it sounds like it's basically a children's cartoon,
Oh,
or I should say it's like a Saturday morning cartoon. Because for the whole MonsterVerse thing, they seem to have dialed in on the facts that wait a second, who's going to be interested in seeing two giant monsters beat the crap out of each other for an hour and a half? Oh, probably little boys. Okay, and they'll buy toys of Kong and Godzilla and stuff. Cool.
yeah, yeah,
That's our target market.
yeah, yeah. Makes sense.
Also, I was just noticing this. This thing actually had a smaller production budget than the 2016 Ghostbusters in unadjusted dollars.
Wow.
So I'd assume that this would be another $200 monstrosity, just given how much CGI there was. But
Yeah.
uh, I guess that they know how to dial in their budgets. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. It's still more expensive than Godzilla minus one.
Look, look, that was a special once in a lifetime movie. Okay.
Okay, okay,
um, but still, much cheaper than the DCEU movies they crapped out last year.
that's true. Yeah,
Also cheaper than Dune Part Dos.
190, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, 190. Um, So this one has crossed 600 million worldwide and 250 in the States. Um, Given the general lack of what I guess I'll call adult science fiction, as in not Godzilla and King Kong punching the crap out of each other for an hour, uh, it's probably going to stick around.
Yeah.
Kung Fu Panda is also doing much better than I feel like it deserves from the reviews I've heard.
Yeah. Wow.
150 million domestic. Just for reference, DreamWorks, show me DreamWorks. If you take a look at the last few DreamWorks movies,
Yeah.
yeah,
Trolls.
more than
Yeah.
Trolls and Ruby Gillman combined domestically. Um,
Wow.
and definitely, it's definitely their best performing one for a bit. So that tells you that they're probably not. I mean, considering they're doing big layoffs at DreamWorks, they're probably not going to be doing a lot of original IP anytime soon.
Yeah.
It does look like they're. I mean, they did just crap out another. Uh, oh, uh, what was that? What was that supervillain one they did?
Megamind.
Megamind. Thank you. I kept thinking Devious Mind, and that was wrong. But they crapped out another straight to video quality Megamind movie for
Mm,
Paramount Plus or something that nobody liked. Or I don't know if it's out yet and nobody liked it, or if it's not out yet. There's no hype. But
yeah.
either way, not good.
Yeah.
But Kung Fu Panda 4. I mean, this is. Do they have a budget? They 85 million,
85. Mm.
sitting at 363 worldwide.
So back of the envelope math, eking out some profit, I guess.
Yeah, like if we assume that, yeah, if we assume that it has to like do 4 times its production budget to start making money, just which is fairly conservative, depending on the ad spend.
Yeah.
They're yeah, they're just around that worldwide. So
Yeah.
yeah, uh, it has justified its existence.
Yes.
Rounding out the rest of the top 10, we got Immaculate by Neon, which I know we looked at what this. Oh, that's
Oh
right,
yeah,
the Nun
that's
movie.
Sydney Sweeney.
Yes, doesn't seem to be doing too well, but this seemed more like a prestige project or like
Yeah.
an attempt to show some real acting rather than rely on her appeal. So
Yeah. Well, considering I have not seen any movies with her yet, I can't really comment on her acting ability.
yeah, I feel like we need to. It's one of these weeks. Once it's up on streaming somewhere, anybody but you is getting our attention.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Considering how few new movies there actually have been to talk about.
Yeah.
There's a reason why I don't think we actually have a new movie this week that qualifies as new.
Yeah,
Look,
that's true.
with our definition of new being it was released direct to streaming or theaters within the last year.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've got Tulu Square, another Indian movie. No poster on it. So follow Tulu as his life is turned upside down following a mysterious murder. That
Mhm.
what a descriptive description.
Yeah. Only 450 theaters, so yeah.
Yeah, so that means that those theaters are making a nice per head or per capita there at
Yeah.
5,500 apiece.
Yeah.
It's here rounding out the top 10. Arthur the King, family dog movie,
Yeah.
19 million after 3 weeks. Hopefully it wasn't too expensive. I don't think Mark Wahlberg has a very big draw anymore.
No, I don't think he does, unfortunately.
It's here Late Night with the Devil, horror
Horror
movie.
movie. Yeah.
Crew is a new one. Funasia, that seems like an interesting. No description whatsoever. Oh, it's a Hindi movie, so Indian.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
And then Imaginary, another horror movie.
Yep. And looks like Bob Marley is not hitting 100 million,
Mm.
which is kind of surprising.
Yeah.
The American Society of Magical People of Color has had a third weekend box office of 56,000.
Good.
Yes. And Madam Web has not crossed 45,000 or 45 million.
Ooh.
Yep, it's not going to cross 100 million. So you can rest a little
Ouch.
easier, the Marvels.
Yeah. Yeesh. Man.
Yep. Speaking of somewhat disappointing Marvel productions,
Yeah.
X-Men 97 did a bad.
Yes. Yeah. So episode 4 dropped yesterday, and it was kind of like one of those uh weird like two half episodes in one, and it was really it didn't feel like something you would see in the first season of a show. It felt like like season 5 when they're like running out of ideas.
Yeah, so a weird thing I noticed watching through some animated TV shows a few years back, Earthworm Jim and Futurama were big examples. If a TV show did a parody of The Wizard of Oz, it was probably doomed.
Yeah.
Like, because that's the idea you pull out of the in case you don't have an episode this week, break glass, box in the wall. Um, Getting Jubilee caught in a video game with Roberto was it's somewhere up there on that list.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, so the basic plot was that it's Jubilee's 18th birthday, and she walks in while everybody's having, you know, cake, or cupcakes and coffee, and she wants to spend her birthday at the arcade, but then Magneto, being Magneto, like, oh, why are you wasting your time on video games?
Yeah, you need to be an adult.
Yes. And she gets mad about it. And so she goes to her room and with Roberto there. And of course, you pointed something out pointed out something really interesting with Roberto and video games.
Yeah, it did strike me as kind of funny and opposite world where you'd have an 18-year-old girl being really, really, really into video games, and the guy thinking that video games were stupid. It seemed,
Yeah.
especially in 1997.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It's something that rarely, if ever, happened. Maybe once in a blue moon.
For that matter, since it's pretty obvious that Roberto is crushing on Jubilee, you'd think he would at least fake it.
Yeah. Also
um,
very true. Yeah.
and yeah, so there's a mysterious Motendo console there that I thought looked kind of like a weird hybrid of a Super Nintendo and a Sega Dreamcast, or not Dreamcast,
Genesis.
Genesis. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was thinking 97 and thinking the CD era of consoles,
Yeah. Yeah.
but and so they get sucked into Mojoverse, and
Hmm.
um, so for those who don't know, Mojo is an extra dimensional X-Men villain who is a concept that I have read a few storylines that I liked, but I think has always been like one of their C or D level concepts to whip out.
Yeah, it's very goofy and kind of like, it's like really, just like we were saying, it's they go to him when they're out of ideas.
Yeah, as I recall, his appearance in the original X-Men '90s cartoon also came pretty late in their life.
Yeah, I want to say it was like season 4 or season 5. Yeah.
Yeah. So the idea with Mojo is that he is a sleazy TV producer. He has a he uses his entertainment and gladiator games to keep a dimension full of slaves called the Mojoverse stale and happy, or happy and fat and distracted.
Right.
Uh, and he has decided over the years on many occasions that the X-Men are very marketable, and so he'll kidnap them and try to force them into gladiator games.
Yes, and now he's got Jubilee and Roberto and basically the X-Men arcade game.
Yes, because TV is a dying industry. We need to diversify. Video games are the future.
Yeah.
Which the way he described it, since okay, so Mojo is supposed to be an out of touch TV executive, but it felt like this show was like weirdly hostile to video games as a medium.
Yeah, it was.
And yeah, so you get some levels like well, the screenshot here that are reminiscent of the X-Men arcade game from the 90s,
Mhm.
down to a bunch of visual references. Although when they ran into the video game version of Magneto, he did not say "Welcome to die" or "I am master of Magnet."
Yeah, a little too on the nose, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. But still, if you're gonna do this, say the line.
Yeah.
Um, and the overall moral of this episode was very much, well, spoiler. If you're gonna, it's watchable, I guess. But
Yeah.
so don't let us ruin the outcome for you if you are dead set on watching this. Uh, it, while they're in there, a mysterious masked figure has been helping them out periodically, and it
Yeah.
turns out to be a future version of Jubilee, who, like a version of her. I guess Roberto died at some point because he isn't. There isn't a future Roberto there. And like she got stuck in the games and is there to help them.
Yeah, I didn't get that. That was really odd.
Um, and and then she gives Jubilee a speech that is weird because it feels like it's the moral to an episode we didn't watch.
Yeah. Yeah, and although I will say one cool part of it was she demonstrated a use of her powers that Jubilee hadn't figured out how to do yet, which
Yeah, one thing I'll definitely give this show credit for is they're definitely thinking of creative applications of the character's powers.
yeah,
Cyclops got that love in episode 1, and Jubilee seems to be getting it in episode 4.
yeah,
But like the speech that the older Jubilee gives her is like, you know, you can't be afraid of growing up, and video games are nice and predictable, but real people are better. And it's like, again, like you, you didn't set that up. Jubilee is having her one and only 18th birthday, and she was asked what she wanted to do to celebrate, and she picked the arcade, and Magneto shut her down
yeah,
without a particular reason.
yeah, and as you pointed out before the show, like, well, why would Magneto want to go to Jubilee's 18th birthday party anyway?
Yes. Oh, but if they had decided to go to I'm trying to think of something that Magneto would actually be entertained by. If they decided to go to the opera, would he have been all gung ho for it? Let me get my opera glasses.
Yeah,
Um, now, okay, so since we talked about this a little bit before the show, have I said my example of how to kind of fix this episode in one line yet, or am I
no, no, you didn't. You haven't said
okay?
that yet.
Okay, so the thing is, I guess we should get back to their summary. So so she and Roberto get out, and they proceed to make out on her bed.
Hmm.
Okay, fine. They kiss on her bed, but the camera pans away, so you have the feeling.
Hmm.
Which they've been hanging out with each other the last few episodes, so it didn't come totally out of the blue.
Yeah,
But this felt like a wasted opportunity because you could have, like, Roberto still is afraid of using his powers because he's afraid that he'll get spotted and his parents will find out somehow.
yeah, yeah, Roberto's a rich kid, and he don't want to lose his inheritance.
Yeah, because his parents don't like mutants.
Yeah,
So what it seems to me is that this could have been a full episode where you dealt with Roberto's problems and you actually set up a plotline where Jubilee was afraid of growing up and having responsibilities.
mhm, yeah,
Um, but instead, we kind of just got this rush thing. It seemed to me that you could fix a lot of things by modifying. So instead of having Magneto once again cucking Gambit by knowing how Rogue likes her coffee better than Gambit does, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
yeah,
Uh, you could have used that time and had Jubilee walk into the room looking exhausted, have Rogue say something kind of southern like, Gee, sugar, you're looking like a dog that lost, or excuse me, a bone that lost an argument with a dog. What's the matter? Oh, sorry, I was up too late playing Final Fantasy, or you just make up like that. I
Yeah.
just can't put that down. And then when she says she wants to go to the arcade, Magneto can say, "You can barely stand as it is, and you want to play more of these video games? No, I forbid it."
Yeah.
And then when she and Roberto are alone, instead of her just generically complaining about him being no fun, you have a reason for Roberto to be somewhat, you know, hey, you've been playing a lot those video games an awful lot lately. Maybe you should tone it down a bit.
Right. Yeah.
And that wouldn't have taken a whole lot more time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But speaking of rushed episodes, we have the second
Yes.
half of this one.
Yes. The second half is basically picks up where the previous episode left off, where Storm was in Dallas after losing her powers, and she meets Forge in a bar,
Hmm.
and Forge offers to help her get her powers back, and does just that, and or tries to help her out, but it doesn't work. And they have this whole thing where like they're horseback riding and doing different stuff, and that's basically it. And then uh
Oh, they find out that, oh, Forge was the one who designed the mutant suppression thing for the CIA.
which I think you called it.
Well, to be fair, I'd read the comic book back in the day, so
Oh, okay. Okay.
I knew that he was responsible for it.
Oh, okay.
But and then he declared that he loved her when they had been on screen together for like 5 minutes
uh
combined.
yeah. And then she tries to leave, and then oh God, what was that
The
guy's name?
adversary,
The adversary. Yeah, the adversary shows up,
a
and yeah,
big owl demon with vaguely Native American theming, I think,
yeah,
since Forge is Native American.
yes, yeah. So that's where the episode ends, and
A very unsatisfying 10 minutes because that was basically a storyline. Okay, so episode two, there's like legitimate, must be episode three. Episode three, there's legitimate criticisms that they kind of pressed fast forward on the Madeline Pryor storyline
yeah,
by and resolving it in one episode. A couple of things could have used a little more room to breathe, but
hmm,
I think we overall came away with a positive impression of it because it also didn't take too long.
right,
This is like when you're scrolling past a YouTube video and you accidentally hit control while you're scrolling your mouse, and it suddenly you've turned the video to 3 times speed for
yeah,
everything. Both of these ideas needed more room to breathe. Now, this was just part one of the Forge Storm story, but I'm finding
mhm,
myself having a hard time caring because it's just too rushed.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. You don't get a whole lot, like you're saying. We were saying like they're on screen like 5 minutes together, and then you got Forge declaring his love for Storm, and it was like no, like you haven't earned that.
No, not even a little bit.
Yeah.
If they didn't want to give them that much screen time, they should have just made this a B plot that they carried out over several episodes in the background. Because then, like with more time in between moments,
Yeah.
you can like the viewer can naturally assume that this is taking place more slowly.
Yeah, like and you were talking before the show in the first cartoon where they would do that in in like these arcs where
Hmm.
like when Professor X and Magneto were in the Savage Lands together. That lasted like 4 or 5 episodes, I think.
Yeah, they were just trying to escape from there, and or they were trying to survive there, I should say. And well, people were worried about them, but that wasn't the A plot.
Yeah,
So yeah, this is kind of a misstep. It was honestly the level of quality I was kind of worried that we were going to get from the start. I
yeah,
really hope this was just a little misstep and not the norm.
yeah. Me too. Yeah. Well, hopefully it will improve by episode 5.
Yeah, I mean, every show is going to have some clunker episodes, but
Yeah.
this feels like such a step down, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll see where we continue with it.
Yeah.
Um, Speaking of superheroes, it, that's the best transition I got.
Yeah.
Oh wait, speaking of teenaged superheroes in accelerated stories, there we
Yes.
go.
There
There
you
we
go.
go. So this recently dropped on Netflix. A lot of stuff that wasn't originally on Netflix has been dropping on Netflix lately, as I think everybody realizes that the streaming wars, or ended, the streaming wars have.
Yes.
Oh,
And who would have thought Netflix would come out on top?
gee, who would have thought?
Yeah.
The best capitalized with the audience that goes to them for streaming.
Yeah.
Shocking, just absolutely shocking.
Yes. Yes.
So Daniel, as I recall, you haven't seen or watched or read a whole lot of My Hero Academia.
Um. Let's see. I'm trying to think how much of the anime I've watched. I watched up until it was the when they were trying to they're getting ready for their school festival, and the whatever, the gentleman thief, whatever that bad
Oh
guy.
yeah,
Yeah.
with the oddly cute dwarf sidekick.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of where checked out of it.
Okay, yeah, I got a little bit further into it than you did, mostly just because my friend group started meeting up less often, and so it became harder to fit 5 or so episodes of this into a sitting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I had you ever seen this particular movie before?
I hadn't. No.
So my friends and I actually had gone to see it when it was in theaters back in 2018 or so. So it was interesting giving it a rewatch.
Yeah. Hmm.
It was especially interesting giving it a rewatch after rewatching Dragon Ball Super Broly, which to my mind has the best animation I've seen for a shonen shonen anime spin-off movie.
Mm.
Um, and so it's like I kept having to remind myself, no, no, this is just normal. This is just what a normal anime movie looks like. You can't hold everything to that standard.
Yeah.
Because visually, this is basically like an enhanced version of a typical episode of the show.
Yeah. That was, that was my feeling too when I was watching it.
They especially put the most effort into the opening sequence with All Might and his newly introduced buddy, who David was it?
David. Yeah. David
David
Shield.
from America.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, like they had so funny thing, I had actually I had thought this was the movie I hadn't seen yet. So as I'm watching the opening, I keep thinking to myself, this feels really familiar for some reason. Why does this whole scenario seem familiar? And then I paused and noticed the release year of 2018, and it all clicked.
Yeah.
But so it opens up with a neat story, neat thing that introduces that when All Might was training in America, he met this scientist guy named David, and they were good buddies.
Yeah. And David made all of his suits.
Right? Because didn't he like destroy his regular clothes using all for one? Excuse
Yes.
me, one
Yeah.
for all, one for all. I always
One,
get that backwards whenever I say it out loud. One for all.
it's easy to do. I've done that so many times. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But so we cut to the present, and they waste a little bit of time establishing how everybody got to this island because there's basically this this isolated, hyper advanced scientific island that's being used for superhero research.
Yeah. And it's moving. It's always constantly moving. It's got the same security as the prison where they hold all the supervillains, and and everybody who lives on the island can't leave the island.
Right,
Um, yeah,
because top
and
secret.
yeah, and so yeah, so uh, uh, Midoriya and All Might are on a private plane heading there because All Might's going to meet with David to help him, figure out, to fix his injury so that he can maintain uh, uh all for I'm doing it too. Um,
One for all. Right,
one
so
for
remember,
all.
yeah, one for all is good because it's one guy fighting for all. All
Okay.
for one is the selfish one.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and so yeah, so they're on the island, and then they run into Melissa, who's David's daughter, the fan service character of the movie.
Yeah. So Melissa is a beautiful blonde girl who is a little bit older than Midoriya and is extremely kind and friendly. And and My Hero Academia tends to be a mildly fan servicey show as it is,
Yeah.
especially with the character designs. And she's like, and now a step beyond.
Yes.
And then she spends most of the movie in a dress for a reception. So
Yeah.
it's like, okay, now I remember why when this movie came out, I saw this spike in online activity of people shipping her and Midoriya because she's basically the perfect girlfriend for him. She even manages to use her super science to magic him up a thing to let him actually punch at full strength when at this point in the series he was having to use his powers at 5% to avoid crippling himself.
Right. Yeah. uh yeah, and so yeah, and so then All Might and David meet up, and of course David knows of that All Might is having a hard time keep maintaining his form, and he's can't figure out how to help him.
Eh, But the thing that All Might is keeping from him is that David doesn't know that All Might has passed on his powers to Midoriya. So when he notices that All Might's powers are deteriorating even faster, this just worries David even more.
Yes. And then Midoriya and Melissa are out looking, sightseeing and checking out the island, and that's when Midoriya starts running into all of his classmates.
Yes, and it's like, oh well, what's her name, Yayorozu up here?
Yeah.
Oh, well, she's rich, so she got invited, and she had like some of the other girls were her plus ones.
Yeah, Uraraka and the girl with the headphone jacks on her ears. I
Yeah,
can't
I
remember
always
her
forget her name.
name.
Who, by the way, I kept forgetting how much of a harem protagonist Midoriya is, because the Midori and Melissa run into these three, and all of them seem intensely jealous that he's hanging out with this blonde girl.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, Uraraka is like the designated love interest for him. Like, is Yayorozu also into him?
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I forget why Bakugo is there, but like a couple, like Mineta, the little Master Roshi pervert,
Yeah.
and the dumb electric guy are also there. Like they got a job at a super secret island somehow.
Yeah, they're like, I think they were waiters.
Yeah, it's like if it's a super secret island with super tech, wouldn't they have robots for that? They have robots for other stuff in this movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was basically an excuse to have them around.
Yeah.
But um, and so once the movie gets started, David, because he's so worried about All Might, has teamed up with what turns out to be a supervillain to steal some super tech that greatly enhances a user's quirk. Because his theory is, oh well, if I can, which he had developed, but then the government ordered locked away.
Yeah, and then yeah, so he and the assistant hire these, super villains to basically do a Die Hard on this
Yeah,
reception.
Die Hard on a superhero island.
Yeah.
With only our teen heroes not in the reception hall at the time because they were running late for reasons I forget.
Well, Midoriya was running late because Melissa had to give him his gauntlet.
Oh, right, his super gauntlet.
Yeah, and then I can't remember why the other ones were late.
Maybe they were waiting for him.
Maybe, yeah.
Their worlds do largely seem to revolve around him, so it's
Yeah.
main character syndrome much.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, yeah, it's a series of cool fights as they work their way through the villains to get to the top.
Yeah. Um, and and of course, the dumb electric guy, of course, yeah, it does the electric thing and then turns dumb. It's always
Dude.
it just cracks me up every time.
It's an interesting side effect of your electrical powers that you could turn stupid
Yeah,
because it makes a certain amount of sense.
yeah.
Um, so things that my friends and I noticed even at the time, you notice what character was not allowed there, like who they kept outside of the danger zone.
Oh, the frog girl.
The frog girl. Okay,
Yeah.
you caught it in one because her powers would have made this whole situation like so easy since she
Mhm.
can climb walls like Spider-Man, swing around with her tongue,
Yeah,
turn invisible.
yeah. There's a part in there where yeah, like one of them has to crawl up the side of the building, and it ends up being Mineta, and he's just like, I can't believe I can't do this. And he's using the balls from his head, and
Yeah. So it makes it more of a challenge for him, but
yeah,
it's here. And he also had the invisible girl locked out. I think the acid girl, like the alien queen, was locked out just because her I don't know, she seems to be like firmly a C character.
yeah, yeah.
The show doesn't like to give her too much attention outside of her seeming like vaguely a happy party girl.
Yes, and there were a few others that were there that you had like that got locked out that have cameos, like the bird guy. I can't remember what his name was.
I was just calling him Bird Guy. So
Bird guy.
the show has a lot of characters.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Although you know who was conspicuously absent, but Netflix has him on the promotional art as the naval laser guy.
Oh yeah, he was there, wasn't he?
Yeah.
That that what makes you wonder if there was a different movie that they had um, available, like because there were multiple movies, but um, I don't know. But I
Yeah.
guess what I'll say, so I'll say for this one is that it's a fun Shonen Jump ride.
Mhm.
Uh, if we're judging it by the same standards of like that Black Clover movie or a Dragon Ball movie or something like that, it's like okay, it's an excuse for your characters to have a one movie villain that they can defeat and deal with a problem.
Yeah. I think my favorite part of the movie was actually seeing All Might and Midoriya fighting side by side, which I don't think ever happened in the show.
Yeah, and the, this was the moment in the continuity where um, it was before All Might exhausted the last of his powers, so he could still function like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like the only time when it could have happened. So that made it appreciated.
Yeah.
I would go so far as to say that the perhaps Melissa might be a little bit of a Mary Sue, but it's like she's a likable Mary Sue, which makes it okay, I think.
Yeah, and plus she doesn't have a quirk, so
Right. She is kind of like an older female version of Midoriya in that way.
yeah.
So it's like, gee, I wonder why people started shipping them for a time there. It's because if you make a best girl who has no flaws,
Yeah.
they're just generally likable, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I'd say criticism of the movie you could make is that the villain is kind of shallow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then again, the real villain is David being afraid of clinging to the past and holding too tightly. So it's
Yeah.
really his story as the antagonist.
That's true. Yeah.
But yeah, it's on Netflix now. So
Yeah.
and I think that if you hadn't watched or read any of the series, you might get a bit lost
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
just due to the bulk of characters. Although I'll also say that My Hero Academia characters are generally pretty. I've described the series as being very one note, but it's one note in the same way that the piano is made up of a bunch of single notes.
Mm.
So it's like I almost describe like writing a My Hero Academia scene as like you're just playing different chords to see who you can bounce off of each other.
Yeah. 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 Very kind of similar to Fairy Tale in that one. Fairy Tale is similar in that way. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Meanwhile, it's kind which is all which means it's also kind of similar to Black Clover, but it takes its characters more seriously than Black Clover.
That's true. It does. Yeah.
But yeah, so overall, I recommend. Not sure if I can make it a blind recommend like some other shonen movies I've watched over the years.
Yeah. Yeah. Same here.
All right. Well, I honestly forget what we have next on our to review list.
I
So,
believe it's yeah. That's me. I'm up. Yeah.
all right, Dumb Money, the
Dumb Money.
GameStop story.
Yes. Yeah. So I watched Dumb Money on Netflix. And yeah, this movie is basically a retelling, or kind of a dramatization of the GameStop um, stock fiasco that happened 3 years ago. Um, and it's kind of interesting watching a movie like this that happened that recently, and viewing it from the lens of being historical, because it's like I remember when all of this was going down.
I know friends who made money. I know friends who lost money.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
I stayed out
so
of it.
yeah, I stayed out of it too. Yeah. Um, but yeah. So it starts off with actually it kind of does that. It does this thing where like the movie starts at the beginning, and then like the beginning of when everything is happening, and then it flashes back and it goes back in time 6 months.
Hmm.
But it starts off where Seth Rogen's character is at his beautiful estate in Miami, and then he's talking to another billionaire hedge fund guy played by oh God, what was his name? Wilson Fisk from Daredevil.
Hmm.
Um,
Good casting.
yeah, and they're following the GameStop thing, and then they see that the stock's going up and everything, and and then they flash back to 6 months, and that's when we meet Roaring Kitty, who's his real name's Kenneth Gill, and he's played by, I can't remember the name of the actor, but it's he played the Riddler in the Batman.
Hmm.
Um, and he's it's of course it's during the big C, and but it's right around the time when things were kind of like slowly opening up, but we still had to wear masks and
Hmm.
all that other BS. Um, and he meets up with a friend at a bar in Boston, and uh, he tells him that he's put $50,000 of his money into GameStop, which at the time was going for like just under $4 a share. And his buddy, who's like a stock guy, is just like, "Okay, you're an idiot. What are you doing? You're married. You've got a baby. Why are you doing that?" And he said,
Right.
"Oh, I think it's gonna go up. It's gonna, and of course they show him, going in his basement and doing his live streams and all that good stuff, um, and but yeah, it's basically just him, talking up the stock, and then we meet a whole bunch of other characters who are like they're not related to each other, but they're just kind of like they all decided to invest in GameStop, and they're for their own reasons and for their own hopes and dreams and all that stuff. And so you have like oh God, I can't remember the name of the actress, but she was in Barbie. She was the mom in Barbie, the
Oh,
Barbie
America
movie.
Ferrera.
America Ferrera. Yeah, she plays a nurse who is, of course, deeply in debt, and she, you know, she's she's on the Wall Street Bets Reddit, and so she's hearing about GameStop, and then and decides to put some of her money into it through Robinhood. And then you've also got another guy who uh, it's the guy from Transformers: Rise of the Beast. He was like the main human character.
You know what? When I tried to watch the movie, I did not even get to the human part.
Oh well, you didn't really. It wasn't that good of a movie, but he's actually working at GameStop, which I actually forgot about this, but
Hmm.
GameStop was people were people who worked at GameStop were considered essential workers during
Oh,
the
interesting.
yeah, during the lockdown, which I kind of remember that. And I
It's
remember
man, who does somebody lobby to get considered that?
I don't know. But but then yeah, so you have him, you have this guy in there, and of course he hates working at GameStop.
Yeah, I worked at GameStop for a summer. It wasn't great.
Yeah, I actually interviewed for a manager job at a GameStop, and I didn't get
Mm,
the job, and I'm kind of glad I didn't because there's another character in there who's the manager, and he's played by the guy who played Harry Osborn in uh, Amazing Spider-Man 2. Um, he's a real real jerk, and so I'm like, oh man, I would have had to have been that guy if I'd gotten that job, but anyway. And then you've got these other two girls who are a couple. They're students at the University of Texas, and of course they all get in on the GameStop thing, and um, and then of course you've also got the one of the CEOs of Robinhood, who's played by Sebastian Stan, Bucky Barnes from the
okay,
MCU.
so they got a lot of big names for this one.
Yeah, yeah, and then uh, what's his name? Um, Offerman, Nick Offerman, plays another hedge fund billionaire guy that everybody hates. They talk about it like, and like Vincent D'Onofrio's character is like, what a prick. um, and then but yeah, then of course everything blows up, um, and then Kenneth ends up making, like, yeah, he becomes like a multi-millionaire, and the other part of it too is you get a little bit of his family stuff too, like Pete Davidson plays his brother, his loser brother, who's driving for DoorDash, and of course he doesn't have his own car, so he has to basically borrow, quote unquote, Kenneth's car, and he's like, quit stealing my car. Um, and the other thing too that was really sad, which I didn't know about when I was, with all the stuff going on with the GameStop thing, but Kenneth also had an older sister who passed away during the pandemic.
Hmm.
They really don't mention how she passed away. I'm assuming it was Big C related. Um, and then Clancy Brown plays his dad.
Hmm.
Um, and but yeah, it's kind of an interesting little look into, I obviously it's biased, in favor of the retail investors who are buying in the GameStop to stick it to the hedge fund guys, and
A good use of Rogan's complete lack of likability.
yes. Yeah, and the other thing too that, and I will say probably the the big C probably helped a little bit with the production of this movie being as fast as it did, because they do show during the climaxes the congressional hearings that they held, which was in mid February, and I remember watching it on TV because I was at my parents' house. I was staying up there because Texas was in the middle of a really bad ice storm.
Mm. Oh,
Um,
I remember that.
yeah, and but but yeah, so what they did was they interspersed like the congressman's questions, that they did via Zoom, and then put it in with the actors doing the answering the questions on in front of their computers. So that was,
That's neat.
yeah, yeah. But but yeah, and it was pretty funny, like watching like you know all the hedge fund guys getting trolled mercilessly the entire time.
Right, because for those of you who weren't paying attention, what basically happened was, so you had Wall Street Bets, this Reddit, and they would people basically just talking about ridiculous stock trades because thanks to stimulus, people had a lot of money to play around with. A little mad money, I should say.
Yeah.
Um, and so one of the funny things is that like if I were to go up here and say I really like stock X, I think it's going to go up 5% in the next week. You should definitely buy it. I'd get in trouble because I'm not a licensed financial advisor and whatnot.
Yeah.
There's no law saying I'm buying this stock. I like the stock.
Yeah.
Like because you aren't really saying, at least at the time it wasn't. Who knows if they've changed any of the rules around that because of things like this.
Yeah.
But like, there's no rule against saying that you think that a stock is good in
Yeah.
a generic sense. So that was the code word everybody was using on Reddit. And what happened was people noticed that there was an unusual amount of short interest in the company because, well, of course there was short interest in the money. They were selling physical games in an era where uh, even in 2021, most game sales at that point were digital, which meant that you didn't have the cycle of buying and selling and reselling that GameStop made its business model out of.
Right. Yeah.
So it was a perfect. So it was a perfect storm of people making stupid bets online and it paying off because enough of them made stupid bets and didn't sell.
Yeah. Yeah. What's funny too was in the movie, I can't remember which character it was. I want to say it was Seth Rogen's character. He didn't even know what GameStop was. Like he said, I think they make I think they make like computer mice, or they sell computer mice. Like what?
Yeah, I mean, to that sort of retail or that sort of big hedge fund investor, they probably just notice numbers and trends
Yeah.
and don't necessarily look into the business too closely.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, actually, Seth Rogen's character in real life, he got hit the hardest. He actually ended up having to sell his company because of
Mm.
this. So
Well, yeah, the problem with shorting is that if you buy a stock, the most you can lose is 100%. If you short a stock, but the price of the stock increases, your loss potential is infinite.
yep. Yeah. Another example of that would be in fiction, but in casino. If anyone's ever seen Casino Royale, that's what the
Mm.
bad guy in that movie tried to
The
do.
sheaf.
Lashif, yeah, with the airline stock. He was shorting this airline stock, and then he tried to blow up this big plane that they were unveiling, but Bond stopped it, and then now he was out of a lot of money to
Yep.
some really bad people. But yeah, uh, overall, it's an interesting little look at what happened. I don't know, of course, this being a Hollywood movie, I don't know how much of it is, is accurate. I don't know how much of it is, dramatization or, taking things out of order to, for the sake of time and all that stuff. But I mean, yeah, it's fairly decent movie. It is rated R. So it's rough in a few places, but
Mm.
it's not a bad movie.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I
Mm,
haven't actually bothered to go out of my way to see it, but it sounds like it's worth a watch.
yeah, and good to see you, Edwin.
Oh, hey, Edwin.
Yeah.
So, speaking of unlimited potential,
Yeah.
Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods.
Ooh.
So, I was surprised to find out that this movie had only come out in the States 10 years ago. It came out in Japan in 2013. But, so Daniel, I know you weren't a Dragon Ball person. And so you're probably tired of me revisiting so many of these this month since Akira
No,
Toriyama passed.
that's okay.
Uh, but the context I'm going to give you is that okay, so Dragon Ball had a manga run from 1984 or 5 to 1995. It had an anime run that was extended by a anime only sequel called Dragon Ball GT for about another year and a half or so past that. So like 1997 was when new Dragon Ball content stopped.
Okay.
And now you'd still get Dragon Ball was still doing pretty well, like because it came to the U.S. later than it did in Japan because of the man, you whippersnappers getting your anime simulcast instead of waiting years for it to come to the States and be it dubbed.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Dragon Ball Z came to the States and that in Latin America and around the world, and that gave it a shot in the arm for longevity. And they kept cranking out video games for every platform for it.
Mm,
But as far as actual new fiction, there really wasn't any. And there were a few reasons for that. Akira Toriyama had kind of been worked like a dog. Uh,
mm,
and you can kind of tell in like some of the how his art became less detailed over time,
mm,
just because the guy did weekly manga for 10 years straight.
yeah.
Uh, and you can tell there's some signs in the last storyline, the Boo saga, that he was getting a little bit burnt out. Like there was still good stuff in there, but
Yeah.
he made some questionable choices with the writing.
Mm,
Uh, and so, but yeah, he was burnt out. He moved on. He did a bunch of one-shot manga. Uh, he kept doing video game design for Dragon Quest, but there really wasn't any new Dragon Ball. And then the idiots over at Fox Studios in the 2000s decided to make a live action Dragon Ball Z movie, or live action Dragon Ball movie, I should say.
oh yeah, I remember that.
And while at the time, I think I gaslit myself into liking it just because of the member berries and stuff. I wasn't as sophisticated as I was now back then. Um, and also, I just very early on said, okay, this is more like the person they're calling Goku is much more like his more normal human son or half human son Gohan. I'm going to pretend that this is an alternate universe Gohan, and suddenly the movie becomes more enjoyable. Um, but there really wasn't anything new for fans, and except for video games.
Mm,
Um, and they dipped their toes into new things a couple of times. There was this animated short thing from in the 2000s that was like a crossover of One Piece and Naruto and Dragon Ball, where there were like all the characters who were similar archetypes split up,
mm,
and or maybe it was Toriko. I keep wanting to think it was Toriko, which is a series that everybody has forgotten, but I forget what it was. It's been a long time. It's been a while.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I remember at the time thinking this is kind of pointless.
Mm,
And then they did a short thing called Yo Son Goku and Friends, which was basically just a short half-hour special, which I don't think is available on Crunchyroll or anywhere else at this point. And I don't think it ever got an official U.S. dub. Where
uh,
basically Vegeta's beta brother showed up and with his wife, and there were shenanigans.
yeah.
Not a fight, just like oh no, there was like a little bit of a fight, but it was just general shenanigans.
Yeah.
And part of the reason that there something was like a little bit more was that Toriyama had, he had actually been trying to help that Dragon Ball movie, and
Uh,
they kept ignoring him.
oh, of course.
And seeing how badly that turned out kind of made him remember how much he liked the series and cared about the characters.
Mhm.
And that's where this movie came from, which amusingly enough was actually distributed by Fox. So I guess they still had some rights from their abortive movie series.
Yeah.
Um, and it's interesting because it's like it was designed to be a one-shot coda to the series, but it also like watching it with hindsight of a decade of Dragon Ball Super stuff, it definitely was it was like it was weird. Like if this had been the last thing and it was just a last little hurrah, that would have been fine.
Mm,
But it was like a perfect springboard for new stuff.
mm.
All right, so what happened? This movie definitely has Akira Toriyama's creative instincts all over it. So you see that kind of bald, hairless cat on the left there?
Yeah.
So that is the villain of the movie, Lord Beerus, the god of destruction. Now, when the character was first envisioned by someone besides Toriyama, So in Japanese, the letters for like the sounds for B and V are represented the same way.
Mm,
So the guy who came up with the concept was his name was Virus, basically virus,
mm,
and so he was going to show up on Earth and infect people.
uh,
Akira Toriyama looked at this and misread that as beerus, as in like beer,
oh.
and he gave him a sidekick named Weiss for whiskey, and he said, you know, for other series, a thing where somebody with an evil virus is taking over the world, and it's like a big serious thing. Nah, Beerus is the god of destruction. He wakes up and he decides that, or he wakes up because he had had a premonition 39 years earlier about that he would meet his great rival, somebody called the Super Saiyan God.
uh,
And he and his assistant Whis go out trying to find this character because Beerus sleeps for many years at a time, like
mm,
decades at a time. Um, so he and Whis go off and they run to Goku, who Goku's friend, one of the gods, King Kai, says, do not antagonize him at all. So what does Goku do? Hey, can we have a quick sparring match?
yeah.
You look like you're pretty strong. Um, and Goku, Beerus says, come out with everything you've got. Go on. He's just very jovial and happy about it. And Goku's like, well, I don't want to hurt you. No, I promise I won't get mad if you come at me with everything you got. And he takes Goku down with 2 punches
Ah,
at his maximum power.
mm,
Because you're an ordinary mortal versus a god. What do you think is going to happen?
yeah.
Beerus, the Beerus isn't satisfied because clearly this Goku guy can't be the Super Saiyan God. Like he was easy. So they go to Earth because that's where all the other Saiyans are. It's the middle of Goku's friend Bulma's 38th birthday.
Yeah.
38th.
38.
She was 16 when she met Goku, and many years have passed since then. The numbers do not add up.
Yeah.
And you have some general shenanigans of various characters. It's like a nice little again. This is where it could have been a nice little coda for the series. Every character gets to do like a little something at least. Like most of the characters have a little something going on. Everybody gets lines. Everybody gets to interact. You get some character combinations that you didn't really get in the show. So that was kind of neat.
Yeah. Cool.
Uh, and then Beerus shows up, and Vegeta nearly craps himself because he knows who he is because Beerus showed up and abused, or he knocked around Vegeta's dad a little bit one time.
Yeah.
And so you have this ultra serious warrior character having to make a fool of himself, trying to distract Beerus from being angry when like Bulma yells at him, or characters try to steal his food. Like, you idiots are gonna get us all destroyed.
Yes.
But eventually things come to a head, and things come to a head, and it's everybody versus Beerus, who disposes of them all very easily.
Yeah.
Vegeta puts up a little bit of a fight because Beerus slaps his wife, and Vegeta gets a rage boost, but it's not enough to make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, like all problems in the series, they solve this with the Dragon Balls because nobody knows what a Super Saiyan God is. Um, and the dragon reveals that if 5 good Saiyans channel their power into another Saiyan, 5 pure-hearted Saiyans channel their power into another Saiyan, they can have this temporary boost of power called the Super Saiyan God. Well, the problem is that there are only at this point 5 Saiyans that they know about.
Mm,
But it turns out that Gohan's wife Videl is pregnant, so having a quarter Saiyan in her belly is enough to make the ritual work. And so Goku achieves his power of Super Saiyan God, and he and Beerus proceed to have a high octane match for the sake of the world.
yeah.
Now, what's nice about this movie is that, uh, again, like you get to see a little bit of everybody. I will say they once again do my boy Gohan dirty because in theory he should be stronger than Goku at this point still.
Yeah.
But he doesn't really get to do much. But that's okay because this movie is about Goku, and what it basically is, it's like Goku's journey in this movie is that he thought he was on top of the world after defeating the last villain,
Mhm.
and he not only gets to see what there is a world of power he can't even imagine.
Yeah.
This power of godhood, but he also is annoyed at it because the only way he's able to fight anywhere close to Beerus's level is by getting this boost from everybody else. And for the guy who's always prided himself on being able to get stronger and train up, and he can achieve anything he sets his mind to, he has to borrow this power.
Mm.
So that this movie is about him coming to terms with that.
Yeah.
And the basic message of the movie is there's always a bigger fish. And Beerus ultimately decides that he had such a good time with Goku that he's not going to destroy the Earth. Um, you know, and this ends up being the setup for Dragon Ball Super with him and Beerus becoming buddies, and also Beerus and Whis aren't going to destroy the Earth because they like human cooking too much. Because of course they come to the birthday party of the richest woman in the world. Of course, there's going to be a good spread.
Oh yeah.
Um, One of the funnier things in the movie was at the end, well, Beerus said, "Well, I did promise I would destroy the Earth, so I guess I have to fulfill that promise." And they're all just sitting there grimacing, knowing they can't do anything to stop him. And he proceeds to blow the top of a nearby rock off. Well, I didn't say I would destroy much of it. I guess I'll have to come back and do the rest of it later. So it's a very good-hearted movie. It actually, again, if this was the last Dragon Ball thing that was ever produced, it would have been a fine enough ending for it because it does basically humbles Goku a bit when he had, at least in this movie, he had gotten very comfortable with his position at the top.
Mm.
Amusingly, they also dropped the fact that there were 12 multiverses in this, which ended up being a major storyline in Dragon Ball Super. So that when this did well and people generally received it well, they decided, it was just considered good enough to keep going.
Mm.
So it's an interesting little bit of the history of it. Now, what's also interesting is that I think this might be due to music things, because I noticed that the Blu-ray DVD release I had mentioned that they were using a different version of the original Dragon Ball theme song for this edition. It is the only one of the Dragon Ball Z movies that is not available to stream on Crunchyroll. It's also not available digitally on Xbox or Amazon, from what I could tell.
Yeah.
So this is a key reason to get physical media, folks.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
I almost want to say that I bought it on digital at one point on my Xbox, and it wasn't in the library anymore. So that might be that's no good.
There's some shenanigans there.
Yeah, though I can't be 100% sure, but
Yeah.
I know it's not for sale there now. So yeah, that's why having discs for things you care about is good.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
But yeah. So that was the Battle of Gods.
Yeah.
Now let's talk a little bit about the Battle of Addams.
Da-da-da-dum.
So, Daniel, somehow you and I had both never actually seen the 1991 Addams Family movie.
No, I remember, I actually vaguely remember when it came out. Like seeing the commercials for it, and I was familiar with the old TV series, but which I never watched.
I had seen a few episodes of the Saturday morning cartoon that came out of this movie.
Yeah. Huh. But yeah, no, it didn't really interest me all that much. I think it was just kind of, you know, I think my parent, I don't think it would have been a movie my parents would have taken me to see because I don't think they were really big on the Addams Family.
Yeah, definitely not. So this is based on the 1950s comic strip, and that has gone through various TV and movie adaptations since then.
Yes.
Addams Family is a very simple concept. What if you had a spooky family that was opposite?
Yeah. Yeah, basically everything that we would find appalling and awful, they think is just amazing and wonderful, and
Just a delight.
just a delight. Yes, yeah, yes. Having Pugsley having an apple in his mouth, and Wednesday shooting a crossbow at him, perfectly normal.
Yep, absolutely normal.
Yeah,
Um, uh, the Mr. Adams, what's his name again?
Gomez.
Gomez. Yeah, he greets his lawyer coming in with by fighting him with a saber. So
Yeah,
like doesn't see the problem with it. Um, he starts every day by golfing and hitting a bunch of balls at the nearby judge's house, and he doesn't understand why the judge would be unhappy that the ball had gone through his window. Oh, you can keep that one. I have a whole bucket.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, they talk about, like, like how much they're just, yeah, just really twisted stuff, and they make like weird food, and and she, like,
Yeah,
there's at one point, Morticia, the wife, the mom, she tells Wednesday, play with your food.
yeah, yeah. Because again, that's the joke. Everything is opposite.
Yeah,
And how funny you find the movie, I think, is going to depend on how much you enjoy the macabre just on its own,
yeah,
but also how much that one joke really appeals to you.
yes, because they milked that joke for all it's worth in this movie.
Yeah, and there's a few scenes where it really works well, but I'll admit that for me, it kind of was stale.
Yeah. I freely admit I have a little bit of a twisted sense of humor, so I kind of I kind of got a lot of it, but yeah, I can see why it would get a little, okay. Yeah,
Yeah. Now, I can definitely see where if you were a screenwriter for this one, you're like, how the heck do I write a script for this?
yeah,
Because they've got the one joke, reverse everything,
yeah,
but also it was based on a bunch of one panel 1950s comics and a 50s sitcom. How do you stretch that out into a movie? You got to have some sort of character arc and some sort of rising and falling action and all the other good stuff,
yes, yeah,
and some conflict and some villains for that matter.
yeah, right. So um, so the movie starts off where Gomez's brother, Fester, Uncle Fester, as he's affectionately referred to, who's he's played by Christopher Lloyd. He's been missing for 25 years. They don't know where he is, or what happened to him. And every year on whatever, I think it was like the day he disappeared, they have a séance to try to bring him back. And so after Gomez meets with his lawyer, who's a real huckster, uh, his lawyer has is in deep with a loan shark, and she has her son there, and of course her son is the spitting image of Fester Adams, and so they concoct the scheme where during the seance they have Fester show up. Um,
Faster.
yeah, Fester, and so the whole thing is that they're trying to get to the Adams fortune, which Gomez has in the vaults deep below the mansion. It's a very intricate system of tunnels and underground river and everything, and so they're trying to get to this fortune by any way they can, but of course uh, the Fester, not Fester, finds himself becoming more and more enthralled with the family and their quirky dynamics, and of course Fester and Gomez, trying to reconcile, for their, with what happened in the past and all that.
Yep. So as far as performances go here, Christopher Lloyd as Uncle Fester is actually I thought he was a highlight to the movie for me.
Yeah.
I had honestly seen the character many times. I had never realized it was Christopher.
I think I kind of knew it was him, but I completely, but it was kind of one of those like, oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Early on, especially when he's nervous about being around the family and being found out, he brings this real nervous, scared energy to the performance. I likened it to like a hairless cat or a little chihuahua shivering there and just afraid of the world.
Yeah. Yeah, because whenever Gomez would start ask him about the past, and they're like talk about stuff, and he'd be like, yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Then he would guess wrong. It's like, what? No, we didn't do that. We did this.
Yeah, yeah. Like, you had your first cigar? No, I had my first cigar when I was 5.
Mother insisted.
Yes.
You also have the late Raul Julia as Gomez.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I had always heard how masterful this performance was, and he was fine. It was probably one of those
Mm,
situations where I just got overhyped because of years of hearing about it.
yeah. I think his performance in Street Fighter was better than this.
Yes, agreed. But he's still hamming it up and having fun.
Yeah, 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 and you've got Angelica Houston as Morticia Adams, and they have Gomez and Morticia have a very weird relationship.
They might be the horniest characters in children's media.
Yeah,
They ended up making out in the middle of a charity auction with everybody watching.
yeah. Seriously, oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Um, and then of course you have a very young Christina Ricci playing Wednesday,
Hmm.
um, which I think was probably the first everybody's first kind of or like her first. I don't know if it was her first movie or one of her first movies. That
See, I thought you were going to say she was everybody's childhood crush, which I think is,
probably true. Yeah,
at the very least, if you're the type to like goth girls, then
yeah. um, and I don't know who played. I don't know the kid who played Pugsley or
he's so this movie is not very much about Wednesday, but it's definitely not about Pugsley.
no, no,
He, he
Pugs.
he is window dressing and is there for Wednesday to do things too.
Yes, yeah. I will say the guy that got to play Lurch looked a lot like the guy who played him in the TV show.
Yeah, man, he is not a character, but he is like a interesting part of the window dressing.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the guy who played him in the TV show, God, I can't remember his name. I want to say his last name was Cassidy.
Mhm,
Um, or maybe I might be thinking of somebody else, but he was in he was also in an episode of Star Trek.
mhm.
Um, he played a robot called Rock, and he scared the you know what out of me when I was like 5 or 6 when I watched that episode because his introduction in the show is he jumps out of a wall like a false wall and he attacks Kirk. Just scared me to you know what.
What was the name of the character again?
Rock with ROC.
That okay. So when I looked that up really quickly, I get the episode "What Are Little Girls Made Of?" Is that the?
That's the one. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, I'd seen that episode. I didn't remember there being a robot in it.
Well, he doesn't look like a robot, really.
Oh, okay. Oh, Rook. Okay.
Ruck. Okay, I don't know. I couldn't. But yeah, and
Okay. No, I could see where that would scare you.
yeah.
Creepy, creepy looking dude. Now,
Oh yeah.
for those watching at home,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a spooky dude.
Yeah. Yes.
He's made to be a Frankenstein monster's butler.
Yeah. um, but uh, but yeah. Although what was interesting was the same actor who played Cousin Id in the movie was also in the TV show. It's the same guy,
Oh, the hairy guy.
the hairy guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah. So as the movie progresses, like Fester, they're Fester, not Fester. Uh, he's
Goes
getting a lot
native.
of what was that?
He goes native.
He goes native. Yeah, he goes native, much to his mother's chagrin. And one of the things he does is I don't know if I want to. I don't know if I should mention this bit or not because it was the funny. It was both of us thought was the funniest part of the movie.
You know
Um,
what? It's a 30-year-old movie. It, if you don't want to get spoiled on this, skip ahead a bit. But yeah, this is definitely the best part.
yeah, yeah. So the best part of the movie was Fester helps Pugsley and Wednesday doing this. They're doing a school play, and the two of them are reenacting a scene from Shakespeare, and they come up with these like contraption things where like when they get cut with the swords, they get like a bunch of fake blood spewing out of them, and like Pugsley gets his arm cut off, and it's just gushing blood everywhere.
All over the audience.
All over the audience. Yeah.
and and like all the normal people in the audience are just looking horror. Okay, so actually, so earlier you'd had like an ordinary kids musical performance, and you had Gomez and Morticia just looking bored as all could be.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then their little kids go up there and they are cutting each other open with their swords, and they're just, oh, bravo,
Yeah,
bravo,
yeah,
as
yeah.
everybody just looks on in stunned, blood-covered horror.
Yeah. It was hilarious. Yeah. It just
Yeah,
like I think what just killed me was it just kept gushing out and kept going and
yeah.
going and going.
Like that was the edge where, like that would have kept me more entertained through the movie, but
Yeah.
it and let's see here. There was another. There was another thing I thought I wanted to bring up. But yeah, I don't think we necessarily need to spoil the end of the movie just because
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
fairly predictable ending.
Yeah. Uh, a common problem with a lot of comedies like this. I think I've said this many times before, but the climax always gets really silly and over the top. And that was
Yep.
certainly the case with this one. It was just like, okay, it's a little much because they feel like they have to take the humor that they've done and just totally crank it up to 11, and it just like,
Hmm.
okay, yeah, dial it back
Yep.
a little.
Yeah, this thing was already crazy enough that they really had to turn it to 11 to differentiate it.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, Now, as far as like the production values, first off, whoever wrote that 1991 remix of the Addams Family theme for the ending should have been drug out and shot.
well, do you know who sang that?
I know I don't.
MC Hammer.
Oh, don't touch this.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. But as soon as that started, I was like, okay, nope, we're done here. Click,
yeah,
click, 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 turn it off, turn it off, turn it off.
yeah,
Um, Now, I would say like the probably the biggest strength of this thing is that the house is almost a character too, to use the overused phrase,
yeah, oh, yeah, yeah.
because it's got some wonderfully imaginative set design and a lot of crazy contraptions all over the place and macabre detail and a lot of subtle detail.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And some of the shots, I find myself wondering how the heck they did some of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what the budget was on this movie.
Let's find out.
Probably, I would say probably mid to slightly on the high end. I mean, the movie did well enough that it got a sequel.
And a children's cartoon spinoff.
Yeah.
All right. No, I want. Oh, there's the Wikipedia article. Yeah, for really old movies like this, they tend to have the box office 30 million for 1991. Yeah, that's a pretty. Man, that actually is about the same budget that Blank Man got, and this was a much better result.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's I think I might have liked it a little better than you did. Um, because you know the I think that you know the little macabre humor was, you know, I mean, it's you know, I mean,
Yeah.
I like it to an extent, yeah.
Oh yeah. And yes, it's just a different strokes thing. I'm sure a lot of people will find this delightful. Yeah, I think it is also kind of like macabre for like what a 1991 10-year-old could process as far as macabre humor.
Yeah.
Special effects wise, there was a few times of 90s green screen that were kind of noticeable,
Yeah. Yeah.
like in the climax, and also with the hand there thing.
Yeah. Yeah, there were a couple of 'em, yeah, they were definitely using, like, a little early CGI, which was very rough.
Yeah, like what I noticed was, so what I'm guessing is that they probably had the guy who was the hand model in like a green suit, and they
Mhm.
filmed that on a green screen and then composited it in.
Yeah.
It's like you could
Yeah.
occasionally see some like edge of it, especially in the opening scene where they made the mistake of having sunlight directly over it at a couple of points.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then what they would also do, like have the hand walk along like a spider, is they also had some times where they like would increase the frame rate to I guess to cover up some of the motion.
Yeah, like the part where it's delivering FedEx packages.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, that was a section of the movie where it's like, okay, are we just doing product placement now?
Yeah, yeah. They had the Tombstone Pizza and the
Yeah.
billboard in the background, and Sally Jesse Raphael making a cameo.
Yeah, that was interesting. But overall, perfectly serviceable dark kids movie.
Mm.
Wasn't to my liking, but I can say that objectively, it's like they were just going for a thing that I didn't expect, or I didn't enjoy as much as I was expecting.
Yeah, yeah.
I
I
was
hear
more
you.
of a Munsters guy anyway.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I probably was when I was a real little kid. Yeah, I was definitely more Munsters than Adam's Family.
Right, which is funny because it's basically the same joke and just like a big Addams Family ripoff.
Yeah,
Um, but like I don't know. It had a different sense of humor. Like it felt like it had more going on than just the reversal. But that I probably would watch it now and go, yeah. I can definitely say they tried for a Munsters TV movie around the same time that this blew up. This
oh
is
yeah,
so much better than that stupid thing.
oh yeah, yeah,
That was a piece of crap.
yeah. And I'm sure, and I haven't seen it, but I'm sure this movie is a lot better than Rob Zombie's Munsters movie that came out a couple years ago.
Rob Zombie made a Munsters movie.
Yes, he did. Yeah,
The fact that I haven't heard of it probably tells me a whole lot about its relative quality.
yeah. I believe his wife played Mrs. Munster.
Oh, really? Yeah, imagine my shock.
Yeah,
Nepotism in Hollywood?
yeah,
Gasp.
yeah.
Well, I think that's everything for today. Thanks for
Yes,
everybody for tuning in for a rather long show.
yes. Yeah, we appreciate it as always. Just to reiterate, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit the bell, all that good stuff, and we'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Good night.